Hello everybody, and we're back with Beyond the Textbook. And today I have with us our wonderful teacher, Elena, and I want Elena to introduce herself to you. Tell us about yourself, Elena.
Hi, my name is Elena, and I'm originally from Belarus. I'm here in Malaysia right now. I've been here for about 4 years, on and off. I'm teaching English. And at the same time, I'm doing my PhD over here. And I've got to say that I love Malaysia. That was not my first impression, but I really like it now for many reasons. And I do enjoy the weather, and it's easy to travel around. And there are a number of public holidays which give you this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming from Belarus, I guess the weather would be a big factor here as a positive thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's good to have winter every now and then, but when you have it 3 months in a row, and these days due to climate crisis, the winter has turned into something totally weird. It's not spring, it's not autumn. Yeah, it would rain most of the time instead of snowing. So yeah.
Okay, so let's start. Now, our topic today is the pros and cons of learning English in a foreign country. And Elena here has got some interesting perspectives, but let's start off with some of the what you would consider the pros of learning English in a foreign country.
Right, absolutely. So I'd say that there are so many different advantages of learning English in a foreign country. First of all, I'd say you get exposed to different cultures. And that gives you a lot of different perspectives on your own culture and how other people live. Now, when it comes to learning English in a foreign country, it depends on which country you're talking about. I mean, if you're going to somewhere like the US, where there are native speakers, and of course that gives you huge benefit of being embroiled in all this English-speaking environment and American accent. But at the same time, if you're looking at a country like Malaysia, for example, here English is spoken, obviously, but it's not the first language. And you also get exposed to other languages at the same time. And the advantage of this is that you kind of push yourself to speaking more of another language rather than your own only. So that would be probably the first one, exposure to foreign culture. And at the same time, you have these different opportunities to use the language that you have learned until now. Whereas when you're in your own country, you're always kind of, triggered to use your own language. And if you are in a classroom and you tend to ask the teacher in your own language, since you don't understand. But here you don't have this opportunity.
I think that's a very good point, because I know we get a lot of students who do study in their own country in the beginning, and then they end up here in Malaysia. And the number one thing they say is, in my own country, I have no speaking opportunities. I can learn the grammar, I can write perfect grammatical essays,
Right.
but my speaking is very poor because I can't communicate on a daily, everyday basis.
Right, and this is what I often highlight to my students. I say, even the fact that you have other people from your own country, do not use it as an opportunity to speak your language again. You've just come from the place where you spoke your language consistently. So use it as an opportunity to practice what you've learned in class and ask questions, just basic things. Shall we go out or something, but say it in English. And I consistently say that to them, because otherwise in the classroom, I would normally have a rule, no other language but English. Whether you're in class asking a teacher or you are talking between each other and during the break, doesn't matter. Once you come here, it's only English. And I push them to do this. And I've noticed that those students who actually, I've had quite a few who would just refuse to answer to whatever the question, if their friends ask them something in their language, they would refuse to answer because I want to speak English, they would say.
That's great. That's really good.
Yeah.
And that's a habit, really, that they have to get into
Yeah.
right from the start. and they're paying to come here and learn English. Why not maximize it, in every way they can?
Absolutely, might as well just use it to the fullest.
Yeah.
Not just by doing the things that you would do anywhere in your country, like watching videos or listening to podcasts or so many other things. Here you have this live conversation. It doesn't matter that they're not native speakers, like your classmates. It doesn't mean that when you leave the school you will be talking only to native speakers. You might get a job with.
And I think that comes down to that other, which I think perhaps indirectly is what you're saying about the different culture. Because when you grow up in your own country, you have certain things you do on a daily basis that are just part of your culture. But when you come to another country, you're automatically, or not particularly another culture, a country with a completely different culture, you're completely thrown out of your comfort zone into a whole other culture,
right?
Which is forcing you to not only change your language but change your behavior, change your approach. You are really forced to make a lot of changes that you probably wouldn't make ordinarily in your own country.
Right. And it actually teaches you so much to learn how you can be flexible and more independent. Well, that's another thing, but at least flexibility. Of course, the first thing, like for example, coming to Malaysia, there could be culture shock. Even students we have mainly come from the Middle East, and yes, those are Muslim countries, and Malaysia as well, but at the same time here they are suddenly exposed to so many other cultures, and there are the Chinese and the Indian and so many foreigners, and obviously some things are not as strict as in their country, and that's where they learn more, they become more open-minded. And I've noticed also in the classroom with higher levels, we would talk about it, like asking them some not really provocative questions, but at least something that would, maybe I wouldn't ask if I were in their country. Here I dare to ask, and they surprisingly just, show me how open-minded they get. And yeah, I agree, teacher, that could be this, but no. We prefer to do it in another way. Like I would.
I think that's a really interesting point, because when you're in your own country, particularly if it's a very monocultural country, meaning there's only that language, there's only those traditions, and I'm thinking of like perhaps Saudi Arabia, Somalia, some of those countries where you really don't find any diversity within your own country. To come to a country, yes, there is a huge shift in mind. And I know there are some come here, particularly they've never seen a girl who's uncovered, who's doesn't wear hijab.
Exactly.
So their eyes are like, wow, look at this, oh, it's wrong, and then after a while they realize, hey, the world is a very diverse place. And like you say, when you get to the higher levels, you can actually start having conversations about diversity, about how, what's your opinion on this and this. And of course they still can sustain their traditional beliefs, but at least they're exposed to possibilities of alternative ways of thinking and so on, which then leads them into having something to say in English.
Right.
Because this is what I noticed myself. At the lower levels, a lot of them, they've come fresh out of their country. They can tell you all about their country. They can kind of regurgitate the same old thing. And I'm sure as a teacher, like me, you hear the same thing over and over again. And it's fine, that's good. But there's a certain point where your personality has to come out, your opinions have to come out. And when somebody learns something for the first time that's quite mind-blowing, they usually like to talk about it.
Right. I've had this experience as a teacher and also as a vegan.
Yes.
Higher level especially, I would bring it up. I mean, I'll bring it up anyway. They would often ask me a question, of course, why, and this and that. And when they reach the level when they can actually express more, they would say, well, in our religion, you have to eat meat, for example. And that made me very curious. Is it really so? Does it really say that? So at some point I actually read part of the of the Quran where it says about it, and it says it's allowed. It's lawful. It's a particular word. It's lawful.
And you mean it's lawful to eat meat or not eat meat?
It is.
Yeah.
So basically it's allowed to eat meat. It's not prohibited,
Yeah.
but nowhere it says you have to. And this was actually interesting. I think it was pre-intermediate 3 level, or most likely, because we focused on the modal verbs there, such as modal, and then the form have to, and then the difference, mustn't and don't have to.
Yes.
Must and have to. And I would bring this question up. So do you really have to, or you don't have to?
Yeah.
And so they feel more comfortable talking about it because, first of all, you are surrounded by not just, people coming from the same culture or country. There is me, who is completely from different culture, and there also, if we get lucky, there are so many other people from other countries in the classroom. And they kind of see how differently people look at other things. And in some cases, some things wouldn't even come to their mind. Really? Can you really do that?
Exactly.
And that's something.
And often I know exactly what you say. They, particularly in Islamic world, if something is out of their tradition, like being a vegan, and they've never ever heard of that word before, then for them it's haram. Means it must be wrong, and then it's like, well, actually no, it's just different.
Absolutely. They just immediately put this wall, and they refuse to look beyond it. But then when you kind of engage them more into the conversation, and then I see your point, and they kind of, some things that would have probably never have happened in their country ever, but here, wait a minute, and there was the student who was really good at English. I mean, he was in pre-intermediate 3, but he could score probably all 8 or 9 in IELTS already. I don't even know why he decided to start at pre-intermediate 3, but anyway, I asked him, would you mind finding some of the extracts where it says, it talks about meat, and it made him interested in that because he never thought about it in this way. Okay, I know it talks about it, but I don't know what exactly. So the next day he came, he brought me all these extracts, and here is where you can find. And he got so excited. I'm not saying that he became vegan, no, but he was very open to this idea, and he was open-mindedly discussing with other students. And it practiced so much their vocabulary, like I said, in terms of grammar.
Ultimately, that's what it is, isn't it? It's getting people talking and using English, and through the exposure of whole different ideas.
And when they get excited, and I see that they want to express so much, and then, what is this word? Like, it's okay, just say it in plain, basic words. When I get their idea, I get the word, I write it down, this is what you wanted to say. And because they're so excited about this topic, they pick up those words fast. And
that's right, because they want to be clear. They have an idea, and then when you as a teacher, okay, this is actually the correct modal verb to use, or this is the correct way to say it in English, that helps them to improve their English, but also improve their communication and know that what they're saying is true to what they believe.
What they believe, and that drives them even more. And this is basically all this huge advantage of being exposed to diversity.
Exactly. And so what about some of the disadvantages, would you say, the cons of studying in a foreign land? What would you say?
Right. Well, they're just like anything else, would have both sides, positive and negative. So here I'd say things like feeling homesick. For them, especially when you go to learn English and you have just finished your high school, and all your life you spent, with your family, and then you're suddenly exposed to what we just have talked about, but you are basically alone, on your own. Well, some of them do have their sisters, some siblings here with them, but at the same time, feeling homesick, I don't have that pattern, but definitely a few students sometimes would feel really down in the classroom. And when you ask, it was interesting because yesterday I was in the intermediate level, there was a phrase, so if you don't feel like talking about it, if it feels personal to you, how would you say it in English politely? So the phrase was, I'm sorry, I'd rather not talk about it.
Yeah.
So, and I asked them, do you often feel when you want to say something like this? And of course, yeah, we do. And what do you say? Before introducing this phrase, they would say, oh, none of your business. Come on, you don't say that.
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
they wouldn't say that to me, but this is how they would respond. Normally, I say, well,
yes,
this is
yes.
quite rude.
Yeah.
And then one of them gave me this example that, yeah, teacher, sometimes I don't feel really good. I miss my family, especially if they have their kids, their wife back there. And when the teacher or someone asks them what's going on, and they don't really feel like talking about it, because if you're especially maybe in your 20s or 30s, maybe it feels kind of awkward in a way that I miss my family, I'm not a child or something. But yeah, so he gave me this example. So homesickness for sure, feeling lonely even though you're surrounded. Depends how extrovert or introvert you are.
Exactly.
If you're not exposed to so many different cultures or even language, the way they were taught, not necessarily language, but the way their teacher was, the one who also comes from their own country. And here I am from Belarus, and I'm probably more maybe extrovert in some areas, and I'm more open-minded, and then some things I would ask them directly, whether they would probably never ask. But in a way, they see this diversity, and at the same time, it can be overwhelming, and they may shut down, in a way within themselves. So it's one thing in terms of feelings, and of course, culture shock.
Yes, I mean, it's great to be submerged in cultural difference, but then there's a point where it becomes shock. And that can make them shut down also.
When it comes to our students here, for them it's kind of easier compared if they come to Malaysia or to learn English, or they go to Australia, for example, to learn English. So here they find number of mosques, they find this similar food and similarities in culture, even though it can be a little bit, less strict in some ways. But at the same time, they see all other things that are happening, and they see clubs, or they see bars and a bunch of restaurants with so many different kinds of cuisine. And it can be shocking in a way, but at least not as much as it would be somewhere, let's say in Australia or the US, where they won't find that many similarities between their culture. So it takes time, but I'm pretty sure that most of them who, again, the final levels, I would ask them, how have you found it useful to be here, or maybe enriching in some ways? And yes, it's not like they have changed their minds or anything, but they have broadened their horizons.
And there's a huge learning curve. I mean, I think to myself all the time when we see 18-year-olds in the class, and I think about myself when I was 18, being thrust into another land. I was so young, and I mean, like you say, fortunately some of them have family members here, or friends or cousins, whatever, but there are some that don't. They get on a plane, first time ever in their life they have a passport, they get on a plane, and they can't just fly directly. Sometimes they have to go through Dubai, they have to come through Doha, or some other place before they get here. They've got to navigate their way through a total state-of-the-art international airport that's got different gates and different transit parts, and all in English. And somehow they have to... I'm just absolutely blown away. And there's one little short story I want to tell you about this that happened to my husband and I. We were in Dubai, waiting actually to catch a plane, and my husband is a Somali, so we were just walking along. We were there for like about 4 hours layover, and there was one boy who, first of all, was a Somali boy. He was sleeping under one of the chairs in the area there, and so Hassan went up to him, because he was Somali, the boy, and he said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah," this is in Somali language. He said, "Yeah." He said, "But I'm a bit lost." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you, you were in Dubai, you're in the international airport." And the guy said, "Yeah, but I don't know what to do. Anyway, Hassan said, "So what is it, can I help you? Let me help you." and the boy said, I've got an approval letter to study in Malaysia at Elite Language Center.
Oh my! And you were there just to
and they told me I can't fly through Qatar Airways or something. And Hassan said, "What? That's us. That's who we are."
Unbelievable.
So he helped him out, and he took him to the Qatar Airways. They sorted out the problem. He put him on the plane, and he ended up coming to here in Malaysia, and he got picked up. I mean, that's a true story that happened. So
what a coincidence. But yeah, the airport thing, when they just first face all this English environment, in some cases English environment. I remember my mom, who doesn't speak English, and when she came to visit me in Malaysia a couple of years ago, I taught her basic phrases online, and when we talked to her, I wrote down for her with the Russian transcription in a way so she could read. And no matter how many times I would practice this with her, she got lost at the airport just because she was also overwhelmed by the number of people, by all this foreign language in front of them. So that's what happens just there, not to mention when they come to the country. And then they have to actually start studying, and they have to get back to their being productive mode. At the same time facing this. And of course, language barriers, that would be also another disadvantage, which at the same time turns into advantage. Yes, you do have language barriers at first. You may not understand, but through even these mistakes that you're making, next time you'll probably know how to ask this question, and you'll feel more comfortable. So through this language barrier, you get to learn, maybe a bit painfully, but
but you get
how
there.
To communicate.
So there's plenty of pros and cons to this. I think ultimately, if you can afford it, I think studying in another country is always a better option, as you say, for all the fact that you put out of your comfort zone mainly, and you do have to get out there and actually study and use your English, and you grow up. I see our students, they come at 18 years old, and then they do like maybe 9 months or a year maximum with us. They're off to university, and then they always come back 4 years later after they've finished their degree, and they're kind of, they were boys and now they're grown men, you know, and their learning curve is huge. Their English has become really amazing, and they're just always so grateful for the experience, actually. So always living in a foreign land and studying English in a foreign land is I always think is a better option. But that's if you can afford it, because it is an additional cost. Right.
But it all pays off eventually. If you manage to do it, it so much pays off. Even the fact that further in employment, looking for a job, how good it will look on their resume.
Yes.
Because the potential employer will say, oh, you've studied abroad, you've been exposed to something else, you probably are more open-minded. And probably more open to different opportunities. And at the same time, independence, that's where also matters, because if you were abroad, studying abroad, you probably learned, it's a huge difference whether you live with your family in your home country and whether you live on your own. You learn how to live on your own. You learn how to navigate in a foreign culture and country. So that also, means a lot.
Okay, so we're going to just do one last thing, which I didn't tell you about.
Okay, what was that? What would that be?
Which is that what we've started to do is we've started to get some feedback from some students who have a question.
All right.
And this is a question from someone called Farida. She is from Myanmar.
All right.
And she has a question. And the question is... she's actually from Myanmar, but she's now living in Australia. So she speaks English to a certain point. But she said, when I'm in Australia, I hear a different accent. I hear an Australian accent, and I was taught in a British accent. How do I know which accent to use, and is it important to come to is there a right or wrong answer with that?
Right. I wouldn't say there's right or wrong answer. In fact, even based on my own experience, because I'm not a native speaker, but I learned English in my country, and then I went to the US, and that was the first time when I was completely faced with this American accent, very strong American accent. Of course, because I lived there for a year, I got used to, and in fact, when I started speaking British English, which I was taught, people wouldn't understand me. And I had no choice. I had to start speaking. It was easier for me. And in fact, I did start to enjoy American English at some point then. And they immediately started to understand me. No more issues. So another case, I went to Australia, and I did face also a couple of other phrases that I would have never heard. And I would say that if you live in Australia, one thing, you understand what it is about, like what they speak, those kind of particular vocabulary. If it feels right to you, feels comfortable to use it, go ahead and use it.
Yeah.
But you don't have to push yourself. If you were taught, if you learned and you feel more comfortable expressing yourself in British English or American English, that's wonderful because people will understand you anyway.
Yes.
But like in my case, I started feeling way more comfortable speaking American English, being in the US at the time when I was in the US, and it worked out well. But definitely my advice would be never forcing yourself. And I have a friend of mine who speaks perfect English, but his accent is still Malaysian accent, very thick Malaysian accent. And no matter how hard, he tries to speak with a British accent, but it kind of, to him, it sounds weird. And it comes out also weird because it's not in sync with yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah, I think just thinking about what she said, it was I realized what she asked was, yes, accent, but also pronunciation, which kind of often they are very similar. So there's some ways you would say in the Australian accent you would pronounce something a certain way. In the British accent you would pronounce it in a slightly different way. But I think you're absolutely right that if you are in that country and you feel comfortable using that accent or that pronunciation, go for it. If you don't feel comfortable using it, you have to also realize, do they understand you? Right. If you're using a completely different pronunciation of that word, they may not understand you, so you may have to force yourself to get comfortable with that. But I think these days, particularly countries like Australia, US, these worlds are so diverse.
Exactly.
That for sure, sooner or later, I think if you're in Australia long enough, I'm sure your accent becomes slightly more Australian, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just had a friend of mine, Julia, visiting me, if you remember, a few months ago. She has lived in Australia, I think, about 2 years now. And when she came to visit me, before that, I saw her like 2 years before. I don't remember. But anyway, I was surprised to hear the way she spoke, because it was not like pure Australian, but it was typical Australian accent.
Yeah.
Even the words like footy, she would say, or Barbie, not barbecue. She would give me examples how she went out for a Barbie.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, there we go. You've lived there for just a couple of years, but you have, because it also, for her, it felt right. She feels amazing when, she feels amazed in a way and enjoys it.
All right, well, thank you, Elena, and I hope, Farida, if you're listening, which I'm sure you will be, I hope that's settled some of your questions about that. And for anybody else out there, if you have a question for us, please email me at info, @elitelc.com, and we will put your question on the next podcast. So thank you, everybody, for listening, and thank you, Elena, for coming and giving us a lovely experience here.
Thank you very much.
And
all the best.
We'll see everybody again soon.
Bye. Take care.